My name is Witi Ihimaera. I'm a Māori writer from Aotearoa, New Zealand, at the bottom of the Pacific. And when I was a boy, my mother gave me a pencil and said I could write on the walls of my bedroom. One of the stories I wanted to write, because I really loved Polynesian mythology and Māori mythology, was the story of the whale rider, of Paikea, who rode a whale all the way from Raiatea in French Polynesia to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And what I really wanted to do at that time was to show the world who Paikea was and what he did, and the triumph of Māori mythology, which in those days was not really well known at all. You know, we were taught Greek mythology at school, and Norse mythology, and English mythology, of course. Except that when I was writing the story itself, The Whale Rider, I decided to update the story, and instead of Paikea being male, he was then a young girl riding the whale. So not only was I thinking ahead to a time when I would update and show my love for Māori and Polynesian mythology to a contemporary audience, but I also wanted to honour the role of women, of my daughters, and of all of the women that I was seeing in the 1970s and 1980s around the world who were beginning to reclaim their sovereignty. Well, that's a very difficult question for a writer to answer, and maybe that's a question that should be given to a younger generation. I would like to think that in this story of a young girl who not only rides the whale, but also ascends to chieftainship of her tribe, that all the younger generation, whether they be young girls or young boys, whether they be first sons or second sons, or whether they are second daughters or third daughters, whoever they are, that they find in the story enough to understand the courage it takes, not just to ride a whale all the way from Raiatea to Aotearoa, but also to negotiate their way through life, to make the right choices, to make choices that are important for themselves, just as Pai does, or Paikea does, when she realizes that her grandfather is wrong and she is right, and that she is the leader of the tribe, and she takes upon herself the decision that she will become that person, even if destiny will not allow it. I've just suddenly realised that you can probably see my feet. Well, anyway, I am Pacific, and I'm living in Polynesia, and it's summer down here at the moment in Aotearoa, New Zealand. What was the question? The accomplishment in publishing in Aotearoa itself is amazing. When I first began to write in the 1970s, there was only one Māori poet who had been published, and then I came along and I became the first Māori writer of short stories published, and also the first writer of a novel. And so all my life, what I have been engaged with is trying to subvert the main discourse. I'm not the only one, of course, because so many Māori during the 1970s and 1980s, much like black audiences, black writers in America, black audiences, black writers in the United Kingdom, black audiences, black writers in French territories, all were doing the same, and that was to try to find equity, equality, and justice for what was then known as the other. The accomplishment worldwide has been extraordinary. In Aotearoa, there were a number of publishing houses that began to publish Māori work. There were a number of established publishing houses, including Penguin Random House, that began then to publish Māori authors, and I'm very proud to be a member of that particular cohort of writers who began to write for Penguin Random House. What that meant was that my work and the work of many others was then able to go global, and that has happened for many of us. In the Pacific, the same kind of accomplishment happened when Pacific people began to write, and when Pacific writers began to influence Pacific publishers and Pacific academics and Pacific news media in the excitement and the passion that was in Polynesian work, then they began to also be inspired by that ideal. So it's been immense, it's been a world changer in my opinion, and I guess that one of the great pointers for that is the fact that my own book, The Whale Rider, has become a kind of version of Heidi and of National Velvet, and so has therefore been able to make the crossover into world literature. And I'm very proud of Penguin Random House for honouring me with that. Well, I think that the best thing for any librarian is to hop on a plane and fly down to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and experience Māori culture physically. On the way, stop off in Tahiti, stop off in Rarotonga if you can, stop off in Samoa, on any of the islands, so that you are able to engage in a real way with those cultures that you're reading about in books like The Whale Rider. The Whale Rider is just a portal, a doorway into the culture. And as you can see, I love that culture very, very much. And I would want you to experience it in the real, not just in the covers of a book. If you can't do that, then the other way is to hear our music through a kapahaka, is to watch the movies that we make, is to engage with the art. There's a fantastic revolution happening in the Pacific and in New Zealand, in which Māori arts practice, Polynesian arts practice, Māori music, Polynesian music is being absorbed into the mainstream. So never forget that the books are only a portal to a world that is beyond the imagination, and sometimes the real is much more magnificent. So enjoy the journey. Ui a mai koe a whakahua ti ake, ko wai te whare nei e, ko wai te teko teko, kei runga, ko pai kea, ko pai kea. She was the whale rider. Astride the whale, she felt the sting of the surf and rain upon her face. On either side, the younger whales were escorting their leader through the surf. They broke free into the deeper water. Her heart was pounding. She saw that now she was surrounded by the whale herd. Every now and then one of the whales would come to rub alongside the ancient leader. Slowly, the herd made its way into the open sea. She was kahutia te rangi. She felt a shiver running down the whale, and instinctively she placed her head against its skin and closed her eyes. The whale descended in a shallow dive, and the water was like streaming silk. A few seconds later, The whale surfaced, gently spouting. Her face was wet with sea and tears. The whales were gathering speed, leaving the land behind. She took a quick look and saw headlights far away. Then she felt that same shiver again, and again placed her head against the whale's skin. She was Haikea. Mā waira e taurima e te marae waho nei. Mā te tika, mā te pono, me te aroha e. Chapter 18, The Whale Rider.